Number 8. Jade Alyssa Alvarez. During the early morning hours of April 6, 2023, 22-year-old Jade Alyssa Alvarez was shot multiple times and left for dead in the streets of San Antonio, Texas. And by the time her body was discovered at 6:30 a.m., it was too late to save her. A woman who'd been with Jade the night before pointed detectives in the direction of her boyfriend, 23-year-old Adam Bird. According to Jade's friend, Bird had asked for Jade to be dropped off at the corner where she was found murdered just a few hours later. At the time, Bird had arrest warrants stemming from an armed robbery he was accused of committing just days before the shooting. So after locating him and taking him into custody, detectives questioned him about Jade's death. Bird allegedly admitted to shooting Jade because she said she didn't want to have a child with him. And in addition to the aggravated robbery charges stemming from the previous incident, Bird now faces a murder charge. Number 7. Twitter user dies in swatting incident. 60-year-old computer programmer Mark Herring refused to give up his highly coveted @Tennessee Twitter handle. He and his family eventually got used to being harassed by people who wanted to get their hands on the lucrative username so they could resell it and get rich. They dealt with intimidating phone calls, messages, false police and fire reports, unpaid pizza deliveries, and more. Then one day in April 2020, a SWAT team surrounded Herring's home in rural Bethpage, Tennessee, with their weapons drawn and ordered the family to come out with their hands up. Authorities had received a 911 call claiming that a woman inside the home had been shot, and by taking the call seriously, they were simply doing their jobs. The call turned out to be bogus, however, and the shocking nature of the situation caused Herring to suffer a fatal heart attack. After spending a large part of his career promoting internet safety, his death was both tragic and ironic. According to federal prosecutors, Herring's refusal to sell his Twitter handle prompted the so-called swatting incident. Federal authorities charged an alleged serial swatter named Shane Sonderman in connection with Herring's death. 20-year-old Sonderman was accused of being part of a group of internet trolls who routinely swat Twitter users with unique and desirable handles to scare them into giving up their usernames. He was sentenced to 60 months in prison, which seems to many like a slap on the wrist, considering the pain and suffering he caused to multiple families. Number 6. Russian Burger Kings refuse to shut down. After the ongoing war in Ukraine broke out in early 2022, the Toronto-based Burger King company was among hundreds of Western corporations that made efforts to cut ties with Russia. But Burger King franchise owners in Russia were apparently unwilling to cooperate with orders to close down their restaurants, making it more difficult to disentangle from the country than the company had originally anticipated. According to the Washington Post, Restaurant Brands International is the corporation behind Burger King, Tim Hortons, and several other popular fast food chains. It owns 15% of Burger King's joint venture in Russia, while a group of investors controls the rest. Led by Russian businessman Alexander Kolobov, the investors are in charge of the day-to-day operations at the roughly 800 BK locations in Russia. In keeping with the stereotype of the stubborn Russian, Kolobov refused to shut down the country's Burger King restaurants, even after receiving a letter ordering him to do so. RBI President David Shear admitted that it was easier said than done to withdraw from the company's agreements with its Russian business partners. In a letter to employees, he wrote, "Would we like to suspend all Burger King operations immediately in Russia? Yes. Are we able to enforce a suspension of operations today? No." Shear further stated that while the company was limited in its ability to shut down Russian Burger Kings, he wanted to be transparent and he wanted people to know that he was taking all possible action in his efforts to shutter the restaurant's doors in Russia. Number 5. Florida woman allegedly kills father for his home. 71-year-old Daniel Gillespie Jr. was found beaten and stabbed to death in his Pinellas County, Florida home in 2018. Investigators spent the next 2.5 years trying to figure out who killed him, before they narrowed their sights on his daughter, 46-year-old Shannon Mary Gillespie. According to prosecutors, Shannon had been ordered to leave her father's home in Clearwater in 2018 after refusing to move out. The eviction came on the heels of a drawn-out court battle between the Gillespies, which included allegations of domestic violence in both directions. Shannon's 3 siblings also allegedly felt entitled to a remaining interest in the home, while their father fought to maintain primary possession of the dwelling. Sources claim that Daniel Gillespie initially allowed his children to live in the home, but the situation grew volatile over time, leading him to take action in an effort to get them all kicked out. And when Shannon refused to comply with Daniel's order to leave, he took the issue to court. Just 2 weeks after Shannon was evicted, Daniel was found dead. It was initially unclear who might be responsible for it, especially since he allegedly wasn't the nicest guy on the block. But as the investigation progressed, all signs began pointing towards Shannon as her father's likely killer. While the sheriff's office declined to release many details on the case, the agency claimed that there's an abundance of physical evidence implicating Shannon as a participant in her father's death, including lab tests and a witness statement. The mother of 4 was taken into custody on first-degree murder and battery charges in early 2021, and according to records, she remains behind bars at the Pinellas County Jail while awaiting trial. Number 4. Work stoppage backfires. The only unionized Amazon warehouse in the United States is located in Staten Island, New York, so it was understandable that dozens of employees felt empowered enough to stop working after a fire broke out in a cardboard compactor one night in 2022. At least one worker went to the hospital after parts of the warehouse filled with smoke, making it difficult to breathe. And this caused staff members to come together to demand better working conditions because they felt unsafe at their job. But their higher-ups were apparently in no mood for collective action, and at least 50 people were suspended with pay due to the strike. Speaking with the Washington Post, union attorney Seth Goldstein described Amazon's actions against the employees as a violation of rights that have been protected for 85 years. But there are 2 sides to every story. Company spokesperson Paul Flanagan said that Amazon respects its employees' rights to protest, but that they don't have a right to occupy active workspaces, which is what they were allegedly doing when they stopped working after the fire, even after the local fire department determined that the building was safe for work operations to resume. Footage showed dozens of employees chanting, "Send us home," in the aftermath of the blaze. This was just one of several instances where Amazon has been accused of refusing to work with the union representing the Staten Island warehouse. Some believe that the company was trying to make an example out of the employees it suspended to discourage workers at other facilities from forming unions. And while this hasn't been proven, Amazon has undeniably spent millions of dollars on anti-union consultants. 3 weeks after the suspensions, workers at an Amazon warehouse in Albany voted against unionizing. As of April 2023, efforts to unionize at other facilities appear to have reached a standstill, and what once seemed like a momentous movement in favor of workers' rights has now been reduced to a dull roar. Number 3. Antimask Uber passenger goes too far. As you undoubtedly already know, a lot of people feel that COVID mask mandates violate their personal freedom. Policies requiring masks have received a huge amount of pushback, especially when they first went into effect. But rules are rules, and many people were surprised to realize that refusing to follow them came with actual consequences. While working as an Uber driver in San Francisco in early 2021, Subaka Katka dealt with one of the more severe reactions to a mask-wearing requirement that made news headlines during the pandemic. It all began when he picked up 3 female passengers, one of whom wasn't wearing a mask. Katka told the maskless passenger that she was required to wear a mask and drove to a gas station so she could buy one. Viral videos showed all 3 passengers taunting and berating Katka, who'd been nothing but respectful in his enforcing of Uber's mask-wearing policy. The women even recorded footage of themselves picking on the driver and posted it on Instagram. Katka ended the ride and told the women to exit his vehicle, and even then, he was firm but polite. Unfortunately, though, his display of respect wasn't returned. The women refused to get out of the car, and one of the passengers went as far as snatching Katka's phone out of his hand and his mask off of his face. She also coughed on him in a very deliberate manner. Katka told the unruly riders not to touch his property, and one of them backsassed, saying, "You were going to kick us out in the middle of nowhere. Are you stupid?" The women eventually got out of the vehicle, but before fleeing the scene, one of them sprayed Katka in the face with what appeared to be pepper spray. Police arrested 2 suspects in connection with the incident, both of whom pleaded not guilty to multiple charges, including attempted robbery and assault. One of the women, Arna Kimeai, was later charged with identity theft in connection with an unrelated incident, but it's unclear where the Uber-related cases currently stand. Number 2. Magazine giant bullies small business. British pub owner Mark Graham was in disbelief when he opened his email one morning in March 2022 and found a letter from the Condé Nast company ordering him to change the name of his business. Graham had never heard of Condé Nast, a global mass media company, until that point. He and his wife had run their pub, the Star Inn at Vogue, without receiving any complaints about its name. The email stated that Condé Nast is the proprietor of the Vogue mark and expressed a concern that people may mistakenly assume that Graham's pub is affiliated with the world-famous magazine. Furthermore, the letter strongly urged Graham to change the name of his business to avoid problems in the future. Graham later told the Washington Post that he initially thought his customers were playing a prank on him. After conducting a bit of online research, however, he realized that Condé Nast was a real company and that its letter to him was completely serious. What made the situation even more laughable to Graham was the fact that his pub wasn't even named after Vogue magazine, but after the small village of 4,500 residents in which it resides. It's the type of place where everyone knows each other and where Graham's pub served as the local watering hole. Graham suspected that the company was compelled to send a letter after he registered his business as a limited liability company, or LLC, earlier that year. He responded with a letter of his own, blatantly describing the request to change his pub's name as funny and refusing to honor it. Furthermore, Graham pointed out that his version of Vogue had been around for hundreds of years, long before the magazine came into existence. He then hung the letter from Condé Nast on the wall of his pub for all of his patrons to enjoy. If it had wanted to, the big-name company could have afforded all sorts of legal action that would have likely caused a long-lasting headache for Graham. So in that sense, he was taking a risk by responding in such a sarcastic fashion. Luckily though, Condé Nast relented several months later, and Graham even received a framed apology, which he of course displayed on the wall of his pub. Number 1. COVID mask disagreement leads to murder. When 35-year-old John Shallahorn tried entering the gymnasium at George Washington Carver High School in New Orleans without a mask in the middle of a basketball game in 2021, he was blocked by a staff member. But instead of putting a mask on as required, Shallahorn allegedly punched the employee, prompting Tulane University police officer Martinus Mitchum to intervene. 38-year-old Mitchum was working security at the game, so it was his job to step in. According to police, Shallahorn pulled a gun from his waistband and fired 2 shots at Mitchum as the security guard escorted him out of the gymnasium, and the bullets fatally struck him in the chest. Sadly, he was declared dead at a nearby hospital. Athletes and spectators alike scrambled for safety. Shallahorn surrendered as sheriff's deputies flooded the scene and was quickly subdued and taken into custody. He faces a slew of charges, including first-degree murder, and is also accused of committing an armed robbery outside the school shortly before the shooting. Shallahorn's case appears to be at a standstill as his attorney fights to get a bench trial, which means that he'd forego his right to a jury trial, and the judge overseeing the case would determine his fate. In April 2022, the judge denied the attorney's motion for a bench trial, claiming that by doing so, she was protecting Shallahorn from potentially seeking the death penalty. Prosecutors have already said that they don't plan to pursue the death penalty, but the judge said that they could change their mind, so she's thereby compelled to protect Shallahorn's right to have his fate decided by 12 people rather than 1. Shallahorn's lawyer has also expressed his intention to change his client's plea from not guilty to not guilty by reason of insanity. According to the attorney, Shallahorn displayed an array of bizarre behavior in the hours leading up to the shooting. Earlier that day, he was kicked out of a casino for acting erratically, and before the alleged robbery and shooting, he reportedly flagged down 2 cops and tried talking to them about something called the spirit. Unfortunately, though, the outcome of the case remains to be seen. Would you rather find out the hard way that a friend or co-worker was telling you the truth about someone being a bad person after you refused to believe them? Or would you feel better being able to say that you gave the person the benefit of the doubt, even if the rumors proved to be true? Let us know what you think in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.